bring the compassions. All right, let's go. So we brought two explanations about the reason for the phenomena the Gemara talks about, that when a woman seeds first, there is a male offspring. One explanation is that when the woman seed is first, then the male seed is on top of the female seed, and that two explanations about the reason for the phenomena this guy is always talking about when the woman seeds first, there is a male offspring. Me. So okay, so when the woman seeds first, there's a male offspring because the according to philosophers, which is the first explanation of the Alter Rebbe, the male seed is able to be on top of the female seed, which is there before, and the male seed dominates because it's on top, and therefore the offspring is male. That's what the philosophers say. The Alter Rebbe says that their explanation is incorrect, and actually the reason why when a female seeds first, the reason why the offspring is male is because it's specifically the female seed which produces a male. So we explained that, the Alter Rebbe explained that the female seed represents our inspiration to become close to Hashem, and the male seed represents how Hashem inspires us. So when we take the first move, so then the offspring is male, meaning that our inspiration is enduring, like the stubborn males, the das chazak, the strong power of das. But when the inspiration comes from Hashem, from the Eibishter, then the inspiration isn't long lasting. There's no das, doesn't last, and the offspring is female, which represents how it's not going to last. So we have two explanations, and the Alter Rebbe's explanation that when the female seeds first, the offspring is male because the inspiration from below is what's enduring. Only in that explanation that we see the virtue of our Aveda, that when we make the first move to Hashem, then it's enduring. But according to the explanation of the philosophers, where they say the only reason why the offspring is male is because the inspiration from below precedes inspiration from on high. According to their explanation, we don't see any virtue intrinsically in the inspiration from below. According to Alter Rebbe's explanation, when is there an offspring which is male? Only when the inspiration comes from within, when we make a first step to Hashem. Then the offspring is male, then it lasts. But according to the explanation of the philosophers, is there something in their explanation also which highlights the Aveda that we do, that our inspiration to come close to Hashem? Is there an explanation about when woman seeds first, the offspring is male? Does that explanation also highlight the Aveda, our efforts to come close to Hashem? So next paragraph, the Rebbe explains that even according to the explanation, we also could see how there's an advantage in Aveda, how our step towards Hashem is more powerful than, so to speak, when Hashem inspires us. Let's see. On page Ches. This idea that when the female seeds first, the offspring is male, and how that highlights the power of our effort to come close to Hashem, that when we make an effort, when we seed first, then the offspring is enduring, then the offspring is male, then the inspiration is enduring. This idea, this idea that there's an advantage in our effort to come close to Hashem is also, according to explanation, that why is there a male offspring? Because the male seed is on top of the female seed and therefore dominates. The law govern, because whatever is higher dominates, and since the female seed is there first, therefore the male seed can be on top and dominate, and therefore the male seed comes from the male offspring. So how does that, I would say that explanation also highlights somehow how our efforts are meaningful. How so? And According to the explanation of the philosophers, the counterpart of the physical, of the male seed coming afterwards, and then being dominant, the counterpart of that spiritually is that when we seed first, when we make a step, come close to Hashem first, so that causes a loftier and higher revelation from Hashem. And that loftier revelation, which is triggered by our effort to come close to Hashem, that is what's better about it. What's better about our effort is not intrinsically in our effort itself. It's just that our effort will draw down a greater revelation from Hashem. So what's better about Aveda, what's better about the woman singing first, but the Jewish people making the effort to come close to Hashem on their own, is in the impact that it has on high, that it causes a loftier and greater revelation from Hashem. It causes the male seed to be dominant. It causes it to be a higher revelation from Hashem. Hold on. According to the Alter Rebbe's explanation, that the male offspring is from the female seed, the virtue in our efforts is not only in the impact and what it has on high and how Hashem responds to it and brings a greater revelation. Because we made a step towards Hashem, therefore Hashem responds to us with something which is greater. It's not because of Hashem's response that there's a value in what we do. Rather, there is a value in what we do intrinsically. Our effort and close to Hashem itself is something which is going to have a male offspring. It's something which is going to be enduring because it's something which is internal, something which comes from within. It's not because when, according to the explanation of the philosophers, we make a step towards the Eibishter, and the Eibishter responds to us, and he responds to us something far greater than we could do by ourselves. So what's good about our efforts? But what's good about it is that it causes a greater revelation from the Eibishter. But according to the explanation of Alter Rebbe, the value of our effort and close to Hashem is intrinsically that our effort and close to Hashem is something that comes from within us and therefore will last. So now that we've explained that both explanations are highlighting the value of our efforts and close to Hashem, now we could explain, but just in different ways. Now we could explain why the author brings the explanations in the order that he brings them. The author first explains that the male offspring is from the male. And the conclusion, he says, is that the male offspring is from the female, from the seed of the female. Why did he first bring the explanation that the male offspring is from the male? And the second explanation, which is a conclusion, is that the male offspring is from the female. By the way, this question is a hallmark in the Rebbe's Chassidus. It's not like a regular kind of analysis. The Rebbe is analyzing the order of explanations out there, and the author must have done this for a reason. Why is this explanation first, this explanation second? This is telling us something about what we need to know in our service of Hashem. There's a reason why this is first, this is second. It's not the author brought one explanation and he disproved it, and then he brought a second explanation. That's just external. A Maamar is godliness. There's something godly about the Alter Rebbe's, about what the Alter Rebbe is saying. He's telling us something in our Aveda by saying this first and that second. It's meant to tell us something. What is he trying to tell us? When you're starting your service of Hashem, in your first step in serving Hashem, what's so good about your efforts, what's good about your efforts is that your efforts will cause a greater revelation from Hashem. And then, as you progress in your service of Hashem, you can reveal the value intrinsically in your Aveda itself. So just like in these two explanations, first we have the explanation that the female seed isn't really the important thing. It's the female seed which causes the male seed to be dominant, which the counterpart for that in our lives is that when we make an effort to come close to Hashem, that's great because, as the Gemara says, Hashem says, open up for me like the eye of a needle, and I'll open up for you like the eye of the opening of the Beis Hamikdash, opening of the Uber. So what's good about our efforts is that the Eibishter responds in a big way. It's not about it's not about the value of what we're doing itself. It's rather that whatever we do will cause a great response from Hashem. That's the explanation of the philosophers. The female seed causes the male seed to be on top, to be dominant. Our efforts causes there to be a greater revelation from Hashem. So there's nothing good about, there's no real value in our Aveda. It's just what it triggers. But then as we progress in the service of Hashem, as we'll see, then there's a revelation, and we could see the value in our Aveda itself, not just in that it triggers and causes a revelation from Hashem, a greater revelation, but that there's a value in the Aveda itself. There's something better about our Aveda that surpasses the revelation, the gifts that Hashem gives us, that inspires our Aveda. So why that's true, we're going to see why this is the beginning of Aveda. In your first steps of a service of Hashem, you should know that whatever you do, Hashem will respond to. And then as you progress in your service of Hashem, then you'll realize that there's something intrinsically valuable about what you're doing. So why that's true, we're going to learn. But that's the basic idea. That's why the first explanation of the Rebbe says that the male offspring is from the male, which means in the first explanation, the first step of serving Hashem, you think that the greatest value is in Hashem's revelation. Just Hashem's revelation is greater when I make an effort to come close to Him. And the second explanation is that the male offspring, the greatest value is in the female seed. The female seed only produces male offspring. Only our efforts is what causes it to be something that's enduring. Let's see. The Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah that there are three different kinds of revelation from Hashem, three different kinds of arousals from above. There is an arousal that Hashem gives us, that Hashem responds to us when we make an effort to come close to Hashem. That's one kind of Isus L'Eila. One kind of revelation is Isus L'Sat, Isus L'Eila. We make an effort to come close to Hashem. We open up for Hashem at the eye of the needle. By the way, you know the track of the needle is, right? Those Tzadikim say that the eye of a needle, what's significant is that the needle pricks. So maybe you open up a little bit, but in a way that it's that the actual function.
Open has to be.
Yeah, so it's something which punctures, not something which is like
There's a place to come in.
Yeah, but it has to be a needle. You have to puncture something. You have to be make a move. Anyways, but one kind of revelation from Hashem is that He responds. We make an effort to come close to Him, and He responds. There's another kind of revelation from Hashem which is meant to inspire us, to come before our effort to come close to Hashem. Hashem sends a revelation to us to cause us to begin our service of Hashem. And then there is a third level, which is called a gift. What's a third level? There is a revelation that Hashem gives us that our efforts cannot never possibly reach. When we make an effort to come close to Hashem, and then Hashem responds to us and reveals Himself to us, we open up the eye of a needle, and Hashem opens up for us with the eye of the opening of the Beis Hamikdash. After there is the perfection of our efforts and Hashem's revelation, then Hashem, which is reciprocal to what we've done. We've been opened up, well, a little more than reciprocal, but it's still commensurate. We made an effort, and Hashem responds to where we've reached. We reach a certain madrega, and the Eibusher responds to us. That's the first kind of. Let me say it simply. There is an inspiration the Eibusher gives to you before you start serving Hashem. That's one level. Then there's inspiration Hashem gives you because you start serving Hashem. That's the second level. Then there is, after the perfection of your efforts and Hashem's revelation, then there's which is commensurate to what you've done, then there's a third thing called a gift. The Eibusher sees His perfection here, and the Eibusher it's not a response. It's not like the response of Hashem to our efforts, which is sort of called a payment. Like we've earned that one. There's another kind of revelation in the Eibusher, which is called a gift, which is not commensurate to what we've done, which is something which is beyond what we've done. The Eibusher gives us as a gift when He sees that there is a perfection here. There's an inspiration from below. There is a response from on high. Things look really rosy over here. So the Eibusher says, I'm going to give you another gift. And then another gift is a revelation which is not commensurate which is not even in the same ballpark of what we're doing, something which is way beyond this. That's the third kind of inspiration, third kind of revelation from Hashem. Got all three. Okay, you need to understand that the whole point of why God decided to have a world is because He wants a home in the lowest realms. And who makes this home for Hashem? We're on line 8 in the page test. The Abishah wants that this home should be made for Him through our efforts. Then move on to this understood that even the greatest revelations, even though those lights of Hashem, those revelations of godliness, that our efforts can never possibly reach, and even the revelation of God's essence. Since God's intent is to have a home for Himself in this world, it must be that even the most loftiest things must have a connection to our Aveda. If we're making a home for Hashem Himself in this world, it must be that we have a connection to not only drawing down some revelation of godliness, which we could reach, so to speak, but there must be nothing that we cannot reach. If we're making a home for Hashem's essence here, then how can we say there's something we could reach and something that we can't reach? How does this fit with what the Alter Rebbe says in Torah, that there is something that we could reach and we can't reach? If Hashem's intent to have a home in this world, and we should make that home for Him, then we're causing the essence of Hashem to be in this world. What do we mean we could reach, we can't reach? What's He talking? The Alter Rebbe says that something God gives us as a gift, something He gives us that we could reach. If we're making home for Hashem, then how could there be something we cannot reach? Rabbi explanation is like this. So the answer is like this. There's two different aspects of our mitzvahs and our effort to come close to Hashem. One is looking at the actual value of what we're doing. We're looking at the mitzvahs that we're doing, the Torah that we're learning, tzedakah that we're giving, just nefesh that we have, whatever it is. So that has a value based on whatever we're doing. That has a value because of the various things that we're doing. It's valuable because of its natural intrinsic value because of what it is. We learned yesterday that there's something that Hashem put in our service of Hashem, which is beyond the natural value of what we have. We learned yesterday that before God made the world, God said, who should I consult about making the world? And Talmud says God consulted the souls of the righteous, which doesn't mean that God asked Hashem should make the world. What it means is, before anything existed, when the souls of the righteous existed, God thought about the Jewish people. And He thought about our Torah mitzvahs here in this world. And He thought about the great satisfaction He would have from our Torah and our mitzvahs. And because of the pleasure that Hashem considered that He would have from all that we're doing here, that's why He made the world. So that means that the source of the Jewish people is in God Himself. Before there's anything that exists, the Eibusher is already thinking about the Jewish people. We originate in God's thoughts. Now, in thoughts themselves, just like in our own thoughts, we could have a passing thought. And then there is a thought that just, like game over. You stop and you remember something, like it touches you to your very core. So when we talk about Hashem's thought for creation, His thought about the Jewish people, His thought about His children, a father thinking about His children, that's a thought which touches into His very core. So when do we say that there's a concept of the Jewish people are one place and God's is, so to speak, another place, and there's things we could reach and things we can reach? That's when we're talking about the way things are externally. There is the value of the mitzvahs and the Torah that we're learning and what it does. But then there's the Eibusher saying, these are my kids. What do you mean? They're one with me. It's not about what we're doing, it's about who we are, and who he is. So looking at us as creations, yeah, there's stuff we could reach and stuff we can reach. But looking at us from the true perspective of God's essence, that we are one with him, then there's nothing we cannot reach. So when the Talmud says God desired to have a home in the lowest realms, and this is achieved the Jewish people, and we're able to cause God's essence to be here, that the world itself should be a home for Hashem. The reason why that's possible is because we originate in God's essence. Therefore, of course, we can draw down God's essence. We aren't a separate being. We're not a creature that's trying to. My Zayda, or Shalom, my Fogelman, say this parable. It's probably an old American joke. Yankel told Shmerel in insane asylum. Yankel told Shmerel, "Can you please bring me the moon?" And so Shmerel says to Yankel, "Yeah, just hold on to it, and I'll bring it down." How are we supposed to draw it down from God's essence? So there is our Yankel and there's our Shmerel. There is a way we are as regular people, regular human beings, like every creature in the world. And then there's stuff we could reach, we can't reach someone. We can't draw down what we can't draw. We can only draw down what we could draw down. But then there is how we are one with God's essence. Then there's it's not looking at a Jew as a created being. It's looking at a Jew as one with Hashem. And then there's nothing that's not within our reach. Ella, okay, so that's the truth. Here's the key to the sugya. Here is the key to understanding the idea. In order to reveal how we are rooted in God's essence, we have to do whatever is relevant to what we need to do. In order to be, so to speak, in the purview of the Eibishter looking at us as his children, one with him. Thank you for bringing your child in my purview. That's great. Anyways, right into my day. So, in order to be in the purview that the Eibishter should consider us as his children, there has to first be our full Aveda. We have to make our step come close to Hashem. Hashem and Hashem responds to us. And once there's perfection here, then we could say, yeah, the Yidden are rooted in God's essence. You could see it. So in our first step of serving Hashem, in our first effort to serve Hashem, so then what can we draw down? We can only draw down the light of Hashem, which is connected to our efforts. We can only draw down the light of Hashem, which is a human being, or which our Torah, which our tefillah could reach. As we're learning last couple of days in Tanya, how based upon what kind of kavanah you have in your service of Hashem, what kind of thoughts you have, that's the kind of light you bring down. That's in our first step of serving Hashem. We can reach the level of Yitzira, we have this kavanah, level of Bria, that kavanah. That's if we're talking about our first steps of serving Hashem. Once we get past that first stage, then we enter a different zone. The Gemara says, Hashem says, Nachas ruach lefanai shamarti nasatzin. Hashem says, I have nachas, or more accurately, there is nachas before me, because I said something, you've done my desire. The Eibishter has pleasure. Where does he have pleasure? What part of him has pleasure? Lefanai, before me. God himself has pleasure from Aravet. So after our first steps of serving Hashem, where we are coming close to Hashem, Hashem is responding to us, then there is a revelation of the stuff that our Aved is made of. How we're able to see not just the Torah per se, or the mitzvahs per se, and with the kavanah that we're having per se, but we're able to look at the inner content of what it is. What is it really made out of? The language of Snapple is made of the greatest stuff in the world. It's made of the nachas ruach of the Eibishter. It's not about just the Torah and the mitzvahs and the davening intrinsically. It's not about the value of what Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemai means. It's about the Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemai causes nachas the Eibishter, and still is nachas the Eibishter, and the tzitz is nachas the Eibishter. So after the first step of serving Hashem and the Eibishter responds to us, then there's a revelation how the Jew and the Eibushter are one, and therefore the pleasure Hashem has is not because of the specific things that we're doing, rather it's because we are His children, and the Eibushter has nachas of His children. Okay, and therefore we have to draw down God's essence, not just a light of Hashem, which is relative to the kavanah that we have. And that's what I want to share today. Any questions or comments or criticism?
Can you do just a quick recap of the three?
Yeah, there is a revelation of the Eibushter before you serve Hashem, to inspire your service of Hashem. There's a revelation of Hashem responding to your service of Hashem. And once those two things are in place, then there's a third thing called a gift. Hashem gives you as a gift, which is not commensurate to what you earned by your step towards Hashem. So that third step, that third revelation, that gift, everything here is that it's only called a gift, only called something which is beyond us, if the measuring stick is how the value of what we're doing externally. But if you're talking, if once there's a revelation of who we are, then it's no longer considered a gift, and that's we're naturally connected to it because the Jew is rooted in God's essence. Okay, Mr. Shafar.